Okay, so we have our star database loader. We hit load database and it's coming up with what is essentially exactly what's written in the CSV file, separated by each line. I'm gonna open up the original CSV file so we can have a look at what's in there. Okay, so we'll notice that first of all, the first line is this special like keys line. You know, it's for example the first index would be the ID, then the Hipparcos catalog. That's what the H in HYG stands for, the Hipparcos catalog ID, and several others after that. IDs, and then XYZ is the position, VXYZ is the velocity in parsecs. And we'll notice a few interesting things as well. So for example, if we have a look at our first entry, Sol, we have a 0 for the first one, would be the ID, good. But then the second one, now our sun doesn't exist in the Hipparcos catalog, so there's no entry there. That's going to come into, we're going to hit some snags if, for example, we're saying to C#, hey, I want you to pass that as an integer, and it's an empty string. Because C# can pass a string that's 0, 1, 2, 3 as an integer, but as an empty string, it'll fail. So we're going to come up with a utility, a parsing utility that's going to be able to handle such cases. The other thing we've got to take note of is because we have this first line isn't a star, it's like our index line, we're going to need to be able to skip that. And yeah, so we'll get started. First of all, we'll make our parsing utility, and then we're going to create our star info classes. So I'm going to go into my utilities folder. I'm going to create a new class, call it parse utility, utility.cs. And we're just gonna make this a static class, which means that you don't need an instance of it to get to the methods in it. So we're going to go public static class parse utility. All right. Now this is gonna have two functions in it. One of it's going to handle integers. The other is going to handle strings. So we'll have a public static int, we'll call it safe int parse. Now it's going to take in a string. Sorry, did I say integers and strings? I meant integers and floats. Yes, one of them will be an integer parser, the other will be a float parser. Okay, so the only case we're going to take care of is going to be if that string is equal to nothing, we're just going to return 0. So return, we'll just use a ternary operator. So, I shouldn't call that string, I'll call it str for now. str is equal to nothing, or like an empty string. We're going to return 0, and otherwise we're going to return int.parse the string. Okay, so no matter what, oh right, sorry, I've got to say that's a string. You're right. No matter what, we're going to get an integer return from this function. We're going to do almost exactly the same thing with a float, except it's going to return a float instead of an integer. Okay, that's everything for this class. Now we're going to create our star info class. I'm going to create a new folder just called info classes, because there'll be there'll be like constellation info classes later on as well. So we'll go info classes, create a new star info class, star info.cs, using Unity engine as well as system.link. Just like in our last video, we're going to use a few link commands just to keep things nice and readable. So we go public class, we'll call it star info. Now this is not going to inherit from scriptable objects or mono behavior, which will allow us to use constructors. What that means is we can say public star info and then have what this means is that whenever we create an instance of the star info class, we're saying you have to pass in a string, which is a CSV line. So this means every time that a star info is created, it's created from a string, which would be that line in that CSV file. And then we're going to interpret that line by line and assign different values. For now, we're going to keep things very simple. I'm going to open up our HYG reference. So this is just our helper file, which is going to tell us what each index of our CSV file means. So I'll just quickly explain what I'm saying here. So for example, here's our CSV file, and our reference is saying, okay, in index 0 is the HYG database ID, and that's going to be an integer. In index 6 is the proper name. So let's say we go like, let's see if I can reach there. Wait, I want to reach it. All right. Let's see. If I go to, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that would be if it had a proper name, like a human name, like for example, Series A, Series B, that sort of thing. It would appear there. Not many stars have that, but we're going to include that anyway. And now we're also going to do our Cartesian positions. That's the three things we're going to concentrate for now. We'll get the HYG ID, the name, and the position. We'll add further things as we go throughout the series. So that's all we need is the indices and the types as well, and we'll go ahead and use those in our star info class. So I'm going to have a public. I'm going to store our variables in this class. So we'll have a public integer, which will be HYG ID. Okay, and we'll have a public string. I'll just call it proper name, and we'll have a vector 3, which will be our position. So there'll be star info for every star and an ID, proper name, position, which we'll get from this CSV line. Now, of course, what we've got to do is, if we have a look at this is what we're going to be getting fed in, is like one line for each star info. We're going to need to split that by commas. So we'll say, well, lines equals CSV v line dot split by comma. Okay, now our first value that we're going to get is going to be a lines 0, the index of 0, and it'll be our HYG ID. So we'll say HYG ID equals parse utility dot safe int parse, just in case there's a star that doesn't have a HYG ID. I believe they all do, but if it didn't, this would take care of that and just give it a 0 so that it doesn't cause an error. Okay, so we'll save int parse lines with the index of 0. Okay, and we'll say proper name equals line 6. We don't need to pass it. Oh, and I'm getting these values, by the way, from this reference sheet. See, number 6 is the proper name, and because that's a string, we can just pass it directly in. Okay, for now we're just going to say position equals new vector 3. And for each of our lines 17, 18, and 19, we're going to assign a value of the vector 3. Okay, so we'll say parse utility dot safe float parse lines 17, and we'll do the same for 18 and 19. Okay. Yeah, that's everything we need to do. Now, last thing, because we're going to want to be able to, at least initially, view this info in the inspector, make sure it's all working. I'm going to make this class serializable. Because it's not inheriting from mono behavior, it's not automatically serializable. It's not a component, rather. So this is how we're able to get it to show in the inspector. Okay, so now in our star database loader, we're going to have a public array of star infos. And what we're going to need to do here with our lines, for each line, we're going to need to create a star info. This is where links are going to come in handy, because remember, we've got to skip that first line and do a few other things. So we'll say, for example, stars, equals lines dot skip the first value. Okay, what else do we need to do? We need to, oh yeah, so we do skip the first value, and then we select. So, I mean, select is like where you, I think we used it in the last one, that's where you say, for each of these string lines, we're going to convert that into a new star info with that, and passing in that line to it. We're going to need to convert this to an array. All right. So let's go ahead and see how that's going. Yeah. Okay. So now we have our stars array, which is 0 at the moment. So if we go ahead and hit load database, now we have 8 elements. Okay. I'm just going to double check that we were meant to have 8 elements. If our sample 0 to 8 is 9 elements. Okay, yeah, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Beautiful. So we have 9 stars. Each of them, or one of them, has a name Sol. They've all got positions. And yeah, so that's at least the beginning of importing our star info classes.